Everyone. So just to elaborate on what we've already alluded to in the blog post, this basically is just to step you through and show you how to open Google PageSpeed in the Chrome Developer Tools, how to run it, and to kind of talk through some of the items that are displayed to you. We'll also have a look at the Pingdom website speed test, just so that you're familiar with everything and you can see it in action. So I'm going to go to, in Chrome, you'll see that I've opened the avantech.ie homepage. I'm actually going to go to my view menu. I'm going to go to developer and I'm going to go to developer tools. Okay. So here are the Chrome developer tools. This is all of the code, the document object model, or the DOM as it's known, which basically shows you the structure of the website, for those of you who aren't familiar with this. Nothing really to worry about here. There's a lot of different tabs here in the developer tools. If you're a developer, you should know what a lot of these are. If you're not a developer, just ignore them for the moment. All we're interested in this post anyway, is the page speed tab. So it immediately comes in and says, here you go, let's make the web faster, page speed insights for Chrome. All we're interested in here really is starting to analyze the page. When I click start analyzing, it will reload the page effectively. So Google is now running the page, it's loading it, and what it's doing then is it's automatically brought us in and it's giving us a summary now. And you'll notice it's a suggestion summary. I did mention in the blog post that some of these items should be tackled and some of them shouldn't be tackled. So you'll notice that we've got three main sections that are identified here in the center, but they're also listed here on the left hand side. Okay, and we've got an already done area as well, which is items that have been worked on already. So just to very quickly go through the main headings, you've got your minimized payload, your minimized delay in page load, and other. Okay, and I'll just step through very quickly what each of these are. So if I go to serve scaled images, I did mention that we use a CDN. We have our Avantech Labs CDN that we use, and most of our static files are served from this CDN. A CDN is a content delivery network. So for instance, if a lot of websites use jQuery, a lot of websites use WordPress, what we're doing is we're saying to the browser, you want to get WordPress from our CDN, but another website may already be after using that CDN. So the browser already has that copy of all the WordPress files on their system. So it doesn't actually have to go and get them, and it will load much quicker. So effectively what we're doing is, if we serve them from our website, from our own web server, it will always have to download it because it doesn't know that it's downloaded it before. Whereas if it's served from a CDN where it's been served from before, then basically what it will do is it won't have to download those files. So it makes everything an awful lot quicker. Now, there's one here. The first one is actually the Irish Biz Party logo, and I didn't realize that was that large. We certainly need to resize that. It's resized in HTML, and it's way too large. So what we need to do is we need to resize that, and we will do. Now that I've seen it, we'll do it. This was after our Irish Biz Party Inspires conference last week. I wrote a very quick blog post on why it inspires and kind of the layout of the day and how it went, and you'll notice that that's way too big. It's only actually for a featured image for the blog post, so it shouldn't be that large. And you'll notice that it says it's 2500 pixels by 2000 high, and it can save a 99% reduction by serving that scaled image, by scaling it ourselves rather than letting the HTML resize it. Okay, the code resize it. It says you can resize it to 230 by 140, but that's based on the blog post area on our homepage. And on our homepage, the image could be that small, but on the actual blog post itself, the image, I think, is 845 by 400, give or take. So if I reduce it to 230 by 140, then on the blog page, it will be too small, it will start looking pixelated. So you need to choose the correct size appropriately for the image where you're using it, and choose the largest size that you need it for. I touched on that in a previous blog post, why and how to optimize images, so have a look at that. The mountain slider and the marketing map, you'll notice the two of these, and the mountain slider is 1700 by 700, but the actual screen display that I'm showing you at the moment is 1291 by 532. So it's saying you could reduce it to this size. But if I had this browser full screen, it would be 1900 by 1080. And if it was 1900 by 1080, then it would be telling me I need to resize it to 1900 by 1080. What if somebody's looking at it on a larger screen again? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to use the one image that's scalable for mobile devices and for larger screens. So that's not something that I would be too worried about. The Irish Biz Party logo is certainly one that we would edit, but the following two are not. And also the couple of screenshots there, the couple of JPEGs, Margaret and Jackie, they're just two headshots of customers that have given us testimonials, and they're a little bit larger than they're set to display, but that's because we're looking at adding them to a testimonial page at some stage, and we will probably need them to be that little bit larger on the testimonial page itself. So it's telling you, don't be serving scaled images. Effectively, resize them yourself. Then optimize your images, okay? Some of these images, the helping height description.png, you could save 70% of size based on optimizing that image. A lot of these, they're 610 bytes, 811 bytes. A lot of these I kind of wouldn't worry too much about because they're the size that I think that I want them, and I want them optimized appropriately. So for instance, the Magner partner logo, it says I could save 3.2 kilobytes. If I looked at the optimized content, it will actually allow me to open it in a new window and show me it optimized. Now, the quality of that image is not as high as the quality of the image on my website. So, whoops, I just closed the developer tools. I'll go back in and run it again while I'm talking about it. So, the reality is the quality isn't quite the same. So you need to make a decision between your quality versus what you actually want file size wise. You'll see in a while that our page is actually quite quick to load, so I'm not really worried about 3K here, 3.7K there. A lot of these PNGs, you could say that you could reduce the size of it, but some of these PNGs are transparent PNGs. They're 32-bit, so the background is transparent, and as a result, I can't reduce them to an 8 or 24-bit PNG because they wouldn't work where I want them to work, because the transparency wouldn't be included. You want to know more about that? Yet again, look at that other blog post. Minify your CSS. So what it's telling us here is that there's CSS. So there's two CSS files and they could be compressed and reduced in size. Yet again, saving a few kilobytes. Now, these kilobytes, they can add up. Okay, so it is important to keep note of these. But minification effectively is the process of taking a file, we type it line by line, and we lay it out appropriately so that it's easy for us to find where we want to make changes. A minified file basically takes all of the white space and all of the spaces out of the file and just condenses it into nothing but code. So trying to work on a minified file would be very difficult, but because it's been minified and squashed down, effectively it's much quicker to load and the file size is smaller. Minifying CSS and JavaScript, it will work in certain cases, it won't work in other cases. Okay, and minifying your HTML. All right. In some cases you want to do that, in some cases you don't. If you're looking at WordPress, there are plugins there that will allow you to do all this kind of stuff. Then you want to minimize your delay in page load. So avoid CSS at import. So the import type of CSS file is one that really, from a page speed point of view, is one that should be avoided. I'm not saying that it should be avoided completely, but it is one that should be avoided from a page speed point of view. Really what we try and do is we try and link to our CSS files, and then what we might try and do is we might combine those CSS files into a single CSS file so that it's only downloading one file instead of multiple small files. Minimize size requests. The request for the following URL don't fit in a single packet. I really don't want to get into packets and latency and all that kind of stuff here. The file size anyway is so minimal that it will be pointless to try and waste time on that at the moment. Specify image dimensions. So for a lot of them, they have a dimension, but when they're put in into the web page, they're not actually physically, the dimensions are not physically defined. And as a result, what happens there is that it's saying, look, you should define the images, but because define the dimensions, but because we're working on a fluid width to allow for large screens and small screens and allow everything to work fluidly, we're actually using a WordPress theme as a base for our website. And that WordPress theme does not need the dimensions, and it will change and adjust accordingly. So I'm not worried about adding those in either. They're not going to save a huge amount of space, but they might save something. Put CSS in the document body that adversely impacts rendering performance. One style of block should be moved to the head. Okay, you really need to understand the 4 different types of CSS in order to understand what this is. But just to say that some of these things, moving the CSS out and moving it into the head of the document, cannot be done in certain cases. And deferring the parsing of the JavaScript is similar. JavaScript should not be parsed at the top of the page, but depending on the type of WordPress theme that you're using, it may be very, very difficult to move that JavaScript to the end of the page. So effectively what it's saying is, well, look, tell us to load the images and the CSS first, so the site will appear to load faster, and then we'll load in all the JavaScript code at the bottom when people don't really know, so it'll be happening in the background. If you load all the JavaScript first, it will load all that before it starts actually displaying images and rendering the page. In certain cases you can't do it. This is only 621 kilobytes. It's not huge. Half a megabyte. It's not really huge. It doesn't make a huge difference. Leverage browser caching, very important to have some kind of caching in place. If you want to use a CDN, use a CDN. We're using 3 plugins. We're using Add This for social sharing, we're using Google Analytics for analytics, and we're using Zopim as our chat widget at the bottom of the page. And they're all external, so I'm not going to worry about the caching for those. They're all external widgets, and they're going to deal with their own kind of caching. Specify a cache validator. Yet again, it's only going to give me issues with regard to external files, and I'm not going to focus on those because the amount of time involved in trying to focus on that is going to be, it's not going to pay for the amount of time that's spent on identifying it. It's much easier to have full control over your caching and your page load speed if everything is hosted on your own server. When you're using external product and external resources, then you don't have control over those because their servers might be getting hit hard, and it might take longer for them to deliver to your website. I had this issue before on our site with regard to the Twitter plugin and the Facebook likes plugin. They were actually taking 6 to 7 seconds to load in, and there was nothing we could do about it apart from possibly search for a better plugin or try and build our own one, and it just made more sense just to take them out for the time being. And then there's remove query strings. So query strings are added to the end of different pages. Generally speaking, what this is they're added to the end of static files so that we know when a file has changed and when it's not changed. Nothing really to worry about. I just kind of wanted to give you a broad overview of what it is. So that's page speed tools. So I'm going to close that down. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go to tools.pingdom.com. And when I go to tools.pingdom.com, it's going to bring me to the Pingdom website speed test. Okay, there are a lot of options here, but really all I'm interested in is typing in my website, and in the settings you have save the test and make it public. I'm not going to do that. And then you can choose to test from one of these locations, or you can choose to just click test now and it will choose a location for you. I'm going to do the Netherlands just for the sake of it, and I'm going to click test now. It'll scroll down, it will start bringing it in, and when it's finished loading, it's going to give me my requests, my load time, my performance grade. So my performance grade is 69 out of 100. The number of requests, 74. My load time was 2.39 seconds, which is not bad. And my page size was 2.1 megabytes. Okay, tested on a particular date. And it tells me that my website is faster than 63% of all tested websites. Okay, so that's good. Now, If I scroll down, you'll notice that I've got 4 tabs: the waterfall, performance grade, page analysis, and history. And I'm going to go through these quickly because I don't want this video to drag on and on for you. Okay, and basically the waterfall model shows us what was accessed and how long, what size it was, and how long it actually took for us to download it. So you'll notice here that what it's done is it took no time to access DNS because it was already Avantech.ie we were firing. 11 milliseconds to connect. It didn't send any information, and it didn't take long to send the information, the request. It was waiting 302 milliseconds until it got a response, and then it took 11 milliseconds to receive the response. So a total of 324. And if I scroll down, I can look through all of these individually, and I can scroll right down. It will show me any of them that took longer. So Google Analytics, for instance, here, it took 518 milliseconds to receive the information from Google Analytics. And I can scroll down and down. It's got every image, every CSS file, every JavaScript file that's listed here. Okay, and then it gives me my 74 requests, the complete size, and the total time it took to download. And it's a waterfall because things can have knock-on effects. So it attempted after the shortcodes to get the Google Analytics, but also the add this. You'll notice that. And the add this was finished and received at the same time as it started trying to get Google Analytics and my sprites. If you would like more information on these, what you can do is you can actually click the arrow next to it, and it will give you response headers and all this kind of information that you really don't need. Well, as a small business owner, if you're not that way inclined, you certainly don't need it. From a web development point of view, it's very, very useful stuff for us to work on speeding up your website. Performance grade, here we go. The performance grade is 69 out of 100, as I mentioned, and it gives you a grade on all of these different items. So minimize DNS lookup, specify and accept encoding header, avoid bad requests, etc. I'm just going to go into one that we got 0 from, which is combine external JavaScript. So what this will tell me is there are 21 JavaScript files served from that CDN. They should be combined into as few as possible. I mentioned that earlier on. And there are certain ones of these that can be combined and certain ones that can't without breaking the site. This is something that we do need to work on, but it's not something that I'm going to focus on because our load speed is at 2.39 seconds. So that's quite quick anyway, but you can see that it gives me a lot of information here. Combine the external CSS. There's 4 CSS files. We can combine those into 4, etc. Okay. Page analysis. Server response code, there were 71 successful responses, 1 redirect, no client errors, no server errors, no connection errors, everything worked. The time spent receiving information, connecting, waiting on the DNS, and sending information. Then the time spent per content type, per domain, etc., etc. There's a lot of information there. You don't really need a lot of it. And then the last step I'm going to go to here is my page load time. Between the 24th of August and the 24th of September. And you'll notice that it was extremely high in cases. It was 44.67 seconds. And then we dropped it right down. Then it climbed a little bit to 6.85. And it's been gradually increasing until we actually did a little bit more work and dropped it down to 5.11. But you'll see it's 2.39 now. So based on the tests, you'll see that we've done some work, and the size has kind of stayed pretty static, but we've done a little bit of work. Now you've got your page speed score, which has been pretty okay. It's been between 72 and 68, but it was at one point it was up at 71, and it was up at 76 at one stage. But we still have a lot of work to do, and you'll see here are the various different speed tests, and that 44.67 seconds was just one day. When the page size was only 1.6 megs, it was very high, and you'll see it took an awful lot. You'll see that we actually did work from the 15th of August, 120 requests on the page. We started reducing that drastically, and then as we started adding more information, it started increasing again. Then we had an issue with our caching on the 17th of December, and we actually disabled our caching temporarily and did a test, and all of our requests were back up. So once we combine some of those JavaScript and CSS files, the number of requests is going to drop back down to 66, 50, whatever it is, and we will get things to a higher level. But I kind of wanted to do this while we were after doing some changes, making some changes to it to increase speed, and before we made all the changes so that our site is really, really fast, because there was no point in doing it on a website that was already completely optimized. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Best of luck with everything, and enjoy optimizing your website.